and we usually tend to save them for the ending. So if there's any questions, we can have them at the end. And if there are, what I also do at the end is give you a chance to ask me whatever you like. So I don't know if you managed to get to that part in the other episodes. So if you've got questions for me, whatever you like to ask me, we can do a little bit of that. But let me just quickly check if we are live on LinkedIn. I'll say a quick hi to everybody. Thank you for joining us. Mohammed and I are really excited to get into today's conversation. Tell us what sort of a clinician you are, where you're joining us from, and did you already know about Pareto? Did you know about Pareto education before we talked about this? And I know that some of your networks on here as well. We've got loads and loads of people registered to today's podcast. Majority of them do tend to watch back in the recording, but it'd be interesting to see how many show up and what questions we get today. Yeah, it looks like we are live. I'm just gonna, people are starting to just pop in slow and steady. But yeah, with that, I think I will get started with my introduction. I'm gonna say, welcome to episode 30 of the Clinician Founder Podcast, where we explore how clinicians are building expert-led, mission-driven ventures that are reshaping healthcare from the inside out. I'm your host, Dr. Shubhendu Kulshresht, an emergency physician and an executive coach, helping clinicians become founders so that medicine can be their side hustle. I host the Clinician Founder Action Ship for those that are serious about more income, impact, and freedom whilst making a positive change in the world and are looking for a community of like-minded, accountable clinicians that, as well as structures that keep them working. Today's guest is Dr. Mohammed Oomerjee, founder of Pareto Education, a rapidly growing medical education platform helping trainees learn smarter, faster, and with more confidence. From radiology to emergency medicine to now building a company in education, Mohammed's story is one of continuous reinvention. In this conversation, we'll unpack how he turned his passion for teaching into business, what it takes to build credibility in a medical education space, and how to balance being a clinician, educator, and a founder. If you've ever thought about building something that teaches, inspires, or scales your knowledge, this one's for you. Oh, and always, if you haven't already, go ahead and follow the Clinician Founder podcast on your favorite podcast platform, which could be Spotify, YouTube Music, Amazon Music, whatever you'd like to listen, really. Hit subscribe so you don't miss a moment. Let's get into it. Thanks for joining me today, Mohammed. How are you?
Thank you very much for hosting me, Dr. Shub. Gosh, it's episode 30. So,
I know.
I mean, it's a journey for me, but it must be a journey for you too.
Yeah, episode 30, and I'm still fumbling through my introduction, but hey, that's what it takes, right? So we'll get in there. Go ahead and tell us all a little bit more about you and how you got to being where you are today, just to start off the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely fine. So I graduated as a doctor from St. George's Medical School, which is down in London, and then subsequently started to think about where I'd be working as a foundation year doctor prior to my graduation, and then decided to move to the north of the country and embarked on my foundation year 1 training and my foundation year 2 training. Now, after I finished my foundation 2 training, I actually started to think about what other things I could do with my career, and one of those was education, because education was a passion of mine. I quite enjoyed the education aspect of being a doctor, as well as enjoying clinical practice. I felt education was probably the one that was my calling. So I decided to apply for a job, and that was a job at my local university. I did the trendy thing at the time, which was to take an F3 and F4 and stuff like that, taking years out of training. So I got this job at the university, which was the University of Bradford, and started to contribute as a lecturer to a number of different courses. Now, they didn't have a medical school, so I came in as a medic in a sea of non-medics. Probably the largest department in terms of professional staff was pharmacy, but you also had a network of courses that serviced allied health professionals, and those included advanced clinical practitioners, advanced nurse practitioners, paramedic practitioners, radiographers, optometrists, physician associates, and more.
Mm.
So I started to understand the evolving NHS dynamic at the time,
Wow.
um, which was under a Tory government, and understood how workforce priority, in terms of workforce development priority, was being marred with finance and direction. So I started to involve myself in meetings concerning policy. A lot of them
Mm.
held at a university and national level. So I started to learn that, okay, you know what, there's a space here
Yeah.
to really try and guide some of my educational passions. And that's where the idea of Pareto education kind of came in. Now, at the time, I was working in accident emergency. I sat a few exams, etc., and that was the direction that I was going to come
Mm.
into.
What year was this in roughly?
This was in 20, so this was from 2019 to 2021.
Okay. Okay. Through the pandemic as well.
Yeah, so pandemic
Yeah.
hit, and I also got married.
Wow. Okay.
So,
Like me, I got married in 2020 as well.
oh yeah, so
Yeah.
so that was interesting. Now I was still employed by the University of Bradford. A lot of
Hmm.
it, the whole landscape changed. Education moved from a face-to-face operation to a largely online operation, and it still remains largely online operation.
Right.
And whilst, of course, certain things can only be taught face to face, a lot of things don't need to be taught face to face.
Hmm.
So a lot of kind of clinical updates to guidance, updates to practice, etc., can be taught remotely. So education was developing off its own back, and also because of external constraints. So with that came questions and ideas of opportunity. So you have we I found that there was a huge allied health professional market, and it was also a question of scalability.
Hmm.
Business no longer required you to be physically present at a particular location at every single moment. Rather, you can teach medicine
Hmm.
to hundreds of people just by sitting in your clinical room, right,
Yeah.
or wherever you may be. And of course, that with that came also questions of, okay, that I can't teach everything because I'm not a
Hmm.
specialist in everything. But of course, with the online world, the conversation then came. You can also get a specialist from anywhere around the country to teach and elucidate and illuminate people on
Hmm.
particular subject matters. So things started to become pennies started to drop, and things started to become quite real for me. Now, I mean, I was alone to begin with in my thoughts, but then, of course, everybody has a soulmate. I'm only joking. That's a bit romantic, isn't it? But I had my co-founder, Camille,
Okay.
um, who was also a passionate educator,
Right.
and he was in the allied health professional space. He was a physician associate,
Hmm.
um, and we decided to partner up. We also had a mentor who would be mentoring us, and we're still always bouncing ideas with that mentor. So it's a three-man operation, really. um, and and what I decided to do was, we decided to incorporate Pareto education, but with the pandemic things were very, very slow, and really it
Hmm.
was August 2021, I would probably say, that we started to really get going.
Wow. Okay. I just want to kind of reflect on this little bit here because I think that's such an important moment where a lot of my listeners and a lot of clinicians find themselves. I think they have passions, they have these things they've been investing their time in. Like it could be coding, it could be teaching, it could be speaking on stage, it could be creating content, various little things that we do in our lives outside that really give us passion. And it sounds like you clearly knew that that was education for you. And then what I hear is that there were a few other elements in there, and there was this almost chance happening of you getting into this role at the university, which gave you a degree of influence, but also got you in the room with these people where you could see the trend, you could see the bigger picture and what else was going on. And it sounds like you came together and you said, okay, let's actually create something, and something that you own, something that belongs to you and your IP. Um,
You, can I add to that?
yeah, go for it.
Because what was interesting is that I shared an office with pharmacists, right?
Mm,
And prior to that, I had very little interaction with pharmacists aside from the ward pharmacist who would correct my prescription mistakes, and like that of
mm,
many other doctors. Um, But I made an observation. This was in 2018 when I got the job. Sorry, 2019 when I got the job, rather. The observation was that many of the pharmacists that were around me were all clinical founders.
Interesting.
So the whole idea of GPs and pharmacists, pharmacists in GPs came from
Mm,
somebody who was sharing a couple of offices with me.
right.
Um, I had another set of pharmacists that were running an entire educational operation,
Mm,
um, who were teaching pre-registration pharmacists. So I felt inspired, and the penny dropped for me that, education as a passion is something that can be scaled, it can be
yeah.
enjoyed, it can be built, it can be translated, it can be
Mm,
spread, and it can be benefited from by hundreds, thousands of clinicians around the country. Um, and I think, that was an inception. That was a really important inception of an idea for me.
yeah.
Um, so as you were reflecting on what I was saying, I was reflecting back on what your
Yeah.
reflection was, and picking out that moment.
Yeah, clearly there was, it sounds like you had expansion of your vision and your horizon. And as people listening to this podcast might be like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. And I think we surround ourselves with like-minded people, and you were outside in a different environment where things were being done differently. So you could see things differently. Um, any other sort of takeaways from that diversity that you were surrounded by?
So I think there was, of course, professional diversity. I think there was, diversity of ideas, diversity of perspectives. Uh, University environments are very different to clinical environments.
Hmm.
I think the most amount of teaching that we would be exposed to would be the ward teaching that we would do, or the occasional consultant-based teaching.
Hmm.
But at university or academia, I had to get involved in doing a PG cert, for example. I had to get involved in module leadership,
Hmm.
organization, trying to understand what it takes to build the next generation of clinician, not only from a practical teaching point of view, but also from a policy paper point of view, also from a, governmental strategy point of view, where you want these clinicians to be
Yeah.
contributing to and over the next 10 years. So you go from being somebody who's very much, I mean, myself, from somebody that was working on my ward at the time, thinking that, the world's at my feet, but actually
Hmm.
realizing and looking above, and appreciating how expansive
Yeah.
the world of opportunities really is, and how small I was in that quagmire, really. So
Did
um,
you ever feel like, oh, who am I to be doing this? Or like, what difference can I make? Or how is this ever going to be successful? You know, those big doubts that kind of creep up on you in the beginning.
I think so. I think because, primarily because you, as a doctor, I mean, certainly for me, growing up, my parents were always pushing me to become a doctor.
Mm,
That was something that was definitely in the primacy of their minds. Um, but I enjoyed becoming a doctor, no doubt. However, what happened was that when you do become a doctor, when you do train as a clinician, nurse, pharmacist, you are trained in a vocational way, ultimately to take up a particular job.
yeah.
So when you start to appreciate opportunities beyond you and your capabilities, you start to doubt whether it's the right thing or not. Um,
Mm,
Almost, you spend the entirety of your career not taking any risk, because medicine is a non-risky.
yeah.
It has clinical risk, but from a job security point of view, it's a very
Very
good bet,
safe.
isn't it? It's a very
Yeah.
safe bet. Certainly when I was graduating, very safe. You're guaranteed a job at the time. You're going to have, if you pass your exams and you go through the rungs of training, you will end up with a good, respectable job with a fantastic
Yeah.
pension, etc. So, and 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 this is where the other aspect of my career took, because I decided not to pursue accident emergency training,
Mm,
despite applying for it and
okay.
getting a training number,
Right.
um, and decided to go for radiology.
Okay.
Um, and I thought, selfishly, maybe, every decision in some ways is a selfish decision,
Yeah.
but I felt that maybe becoming a radiologist will give me a little bit more, um, not stability, but I'd be able to manage my time better. It's a shorter training pathway.
Mm.
Yes, the exams are tough, and but I'll be able to deal with that. I had a GP offer, A&E offer, and radiology offer,
Right.
and this is when our business was growing. It was in
Okay.
its infancy, but it was still growing,
Mm.
and and I do love ED, no doubt. I know you're an emergency
Yeah.
medicine registrar. It's fantastic. Gives you an energy that not many specialties do.
Yeah.
But I thought for me at the time, let me try radiology, and I was thankful enough that I got radiology offer, my first choice at the time. Um, but then that experience, despite the value that's added as a radiologist, no doubt, I think I realized that as well as um, as well as liking and loving the fact of being an educator, I've always wanted my education to be linked directly to patient care.
Mm.
Um, and teaching people how to take a good history, teaching clinicians how to identify certain red flags, etc. That's the type of thing that I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
And I had to make a little bit of a decision as to whether I was going to wrap my career choice around my business,
Mm.
and Pareto education in particular, or whether Pareto education will stand alone from my business. Sorry, Pareto education will stand alone from my career as a radiologist.
Yeah.
If that dynamic makes sense.
Yeah, it's a tough one to choose from because I mean, one is definitely assured and you're going to get to the end and you're going to become a consultant, and the other one has loads and loads of risks to it, and it
Yeah,
seems like you should clearly give one up for the other from a typical Asian Indian perspective.
indeed. But also, I think the type of education that I wanted Pareto education to deliver,
Yeah.
that the most amount of clinicians would benefit from, my career as a radiologist will not necessarily enhance my ability to deliver that
Hmm.
teaching, because I knew that the terrain of allied health professionals and doctors required a wide range of teaching.
Yeah.
So, and also, I didn't enjoy my time as a radiologist purely because I really missed patients.
Okay.
Um, I enjoyed I enjoy patient contact, etc. So it was a personal choice, and then
Hmm.
I jumped ship to general practice, and I haven't really looked back since then. To be
Okay.
fair, I think
Wow.
it's the balance for me.
Yeah.
Um,
And are you full time?
I know I'm less than full time,
Okay.
like every wise man or woman is.
Yeah.
um, I think yeah, I'm less than full time. I'm very close to CCTing, so
Oh, fantastic.
that'll be good.
Yeah. Okay. So you went through those mega tough decisions and like took your career in a couple of different ways. And I think that's just goes to show that like the decision doesn't have to be perfect. There are ways in which you can work around it in a couple of years, figure yourself out. And so then you established Pareto Education, you incorporated and you set this business up. Tell us just a little bit about what Pareto Education does currently and then how did it even get there?
Yeah. So what we do, we provide um, clinical courses. That's the headline.
Okay.
um, and we provide them to clinicians from a wide spectrum of professional backgrounds. Um, and we do this thus far we've managed to interact and directly teach over 5,000 clinicians around the country.
Wow.
We interact with them on a regular basis through weekly newsletters with a very active social media
Hmm.
page and platforms, and YouTube and all of these different things. Now, what we try and do is we try to contribute to the CPD of clinicians by
Okay.
carefully selecting particular areas.
Hmm.
Either those areas are what we call pain points. We run regular surveys and we try to understand the types of clinical areas that clinicians struggle with,
Hmm.
and we also try and deal with those areas that are constants. So I'll give us some examples.
Yep.
So, for example, we have one of the areas that a lot of colleagues in primary care struggle with is pain management,
Okay.
particularly prescribing practice and chronic pain and some of those. So we ascertain that information through a survey. and we try and find somebody who's specialized in pain. So in this case, we have an event with an anesthetist who is a specialist in pain management. So
Okay.
she's a pain consultant rather.
Right.
Um, and that's directly trying to address them. And we
Hmm.
realize that clinicians are looking for expertise. They're looking for things that are experience based,
Hmm.
because they can read guidance anywhere really, or they
Yeah.
can read guidance on CKS, but they're looking for insights, experience, cases, and we try to bring them experiences. Now, critically, our main focus is to ensure that clinicians are fulfilling their CPD requirements.
Okay.
Because as you're aware, we have appraisals.
Yeah.
Every clinical
Clinician.
professional has an appraisal, absolutely, and every appraisal has particular requirements, and one of those is externally accredited CPD.
Okay.
So we ensure that all of our offerings, in terms of our main courses, are externally accredited.
Okay.
They have been externally verified by
Hmm.
an organization. So we have to submit all of the materials and slides in advance. It gets seen by somebody who is medical in background on the other side. We get given corrections, and then after that, it's a to and fro process.
Okay. Just quickly, a couple of questions about that is like, how long does that take, and is it an expensive process? Do you have would you rather speak to them early or later? Just some insights into someone who might be considering getting their course CPD accredited.
Yeah, it's an expensive process.
Yep.
Um, if you want to get a full course accredited, generally speaking, for 2 years, you're paying. I mean, it's relatively expensive. Of course, it all depends on.
Hmm.
But if you're a founder, you're looking for an excess of probably about £500, £600,
Okay. Yeah.
including VAT.
Hmm.
Um, so it's an expensive operation, but I can understand the expense because
Hmm.
it's accreditation, it's CPD. There's a badge of honor that's attached there,
Yep.
and it needs to be up to date and up to scratch. The process needs to be managed. I think
Hmm.
you learn from doing it so many times that you have to be able to submit it over time, submit it well in advance, and then it gets looked at and then sent back with corrections, and then you need to resubmit it, and that can take as long as it needs to, really.
Okay.
Um, Personally, I'm not responsible for the development
Ac-
of the slides. It's my wingman Camille, who works with the clinicians who are going to be delivering to get a spec. Then
Hmm.
we create the slides, we send them back to the clinicians for correction. Then we send it to the CPD company, and then that's where we get our accreditation.
Okay.
But the accreditation is really important. Um,
Hmm.
I think that's probably the most
Yeah.
vital thing. That's one of the thing of value
Yeah.
that many of our clinicians like,
Yeah.
um, purely because they're able to submit that as part of their portfolio.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, I'm looking at this from the lens of positioning. So, the framework I like to think about is the offer, your credibility, and the belief. And
Mhm.
there's clearly the offer is like get your CPDs fulfilled. And then the credibility is that you're fantastic educators, you're getting people in the room that have the qualifications to actually be able to teach what they wanting to teach. And then the belief element is, as I think you were alluding to, like people who've actually got experience in that field, and then of course testimonials, and then your experience grows with time. So you've really covered all of those elements, to kind of position yourself as like, this is what we're delivering, but there's so much more you get along with it that translates.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, you evolve with your journey.
Yeah.
You evolve with the time and the landscape. So,
Mm,
as we've kind of done this, because our main funnel, what I would say,
mm.
if you want to use a marketing term, is our weekly webinars. We do something called
Okay.
CPD at 7.
Wow.
So
Okay.
every Wednesday at 7 p.m. is a live webinar, and clinicians are able to obtain slides. They're able to obtain like a small certificate of
Attendance.
attendance, and most clinicians find that very, very valuable.
Okay.
And as we grow, we find clinicians. If you give me 1 second,
Hmm.
sorry.
Yeah. So in the meanwhile, everyone
Sorry
else,
about
thanks
that.
for joining us.
I'm
And
back.
no, welcome
I'm
back.
back. Sorry about that.
No, no, that's totally fine. You were telling us how the main driver. So we're now getting into like what the business structure looks like, what the customer journey is, and then
Yes, absolutely.
business model as well. So you were saying the webinars is the main driver on a weekly
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah, on a weekly basis, it is the
Wow.
webinar. Now, the webinar is is quite valuable from our
Hmm.
perspective and also from the clinician's perspective. We carefully select our titles, um, and we run regular questionnaires, regular polls, and really our audience is very appreciative of that, and they get back to us with really good quality information. So that helps us decide what we're going to run. It's at a set time. It's every single week. People know what to expect. They come.
Right.
The registration is, a single platform registration. It's through our website, which I'm
Hmm.
sure will be on the handles.
Yep.
Um, and it's just a very simplified process. You come to the website, and the first thing you see is CPD at 7 p.m. and
Okay.
and people can just join on, choose the topic they want, and they're sent reminders. And actually, the process works. We get regular attendees that keep coming back, and we get lots of new attendees. But with those new attendees, we learn that there's more professionals. It's medics and more that come to our events. So we learn to try and interact with them to see
Hmm.
what their CPD requirements are, and to try and create both live and on-demand courses for them, so that we can
Okay.
enrich their abilities as clinicians.
Oh, fantastic. And so it sounds like you're almost direct to consumer. Is that right?
Yeah, at the moment we
Okay.
are.
Yeah, at the moment you are. And so people come in for your weekly webinars, they get some CPD out of it, they get to experience what Pareto education is about. What's the most common next step from there?
So what normally happens is that they as you said, they come to the webinar, and then after that they are, of course, in those webinars we tell them about what events we've got planned.
Mm.
They have the option of they have a number of different options. Of course, they can just leave the webinar and never return again. But most clinicians like to sign up to our newsletter, which has been
Okay.
going for about a year and a half strong.
Mm.
Most clinicians like to join up to our mailing list. We have other platforms like WhatsApp groups, etc., that we've created. So we try to keep people within a particular sphere.
Mm.
And what we're trying to do is we're trying to become a one-stop shop
Okay.
for the CPD needs of clinicians. So if you're a clinician, you need somewhere to store your portfolio. So we're
Mm.
creating features where you can store your certificates and
Right.
store information and download at once, so that you're ready for your appraisal, as an example.
Okay.
If you're looking for instance, a training on ECGs, for instance, whether you're a HCA looking for how to actually do an ECG in
Mm.
terms of the mechanics, or you're looking at it from a more specialized level in terms of interpretation, we're building courses for that. If you're a clinician that wants to learn a bit more about detailed blood interpretation, then we've got courses available for that. And depending on the type of course, etc., we bring in expertise to deliver that, and it becomes accessible to that
Okay.
clinician to watch in their own time.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. So they then get the choice to pick whichever is best suited for them. Okay.
Exactly.
Walk me through some of the challenges you faced, or like what are the big hurdles that you've had to learn the hard way to figure out and say like, oh my God, this is why people aren't showing up to the webinars. This is why people just don't want to buy stuff. And then you fixed it, and now you know what it's like on the other side.
I think, when you maybe this is a clinician thing,
Mm,
maybe it's a doctor thing. I don't know. I haven't quite worked it out, but I can tell you what my anecdotal experience is. Um, so there's oftentimes every business or every operation has quiet periods and has busier periods. Um, and one of the things that we've learned is to move with the market,
mm,
to try and move with the market. So when we joined, for example, there were particular professional groups that were very much endorsed, that were very well funded, that were receiving lots of funding centrally from the government, from ICBs, from trusts. And we thought, hey, you know what? This might be our big break. And
Right.
you'd focus, you'd focus, you'd focus. And then the landscape changes. There's factors outside of your control. Yes, we haven't had two negative quarters of economic growth, but
Mm.
everybody can see that spending is pretty tight. I think we've been in austerity for the last 13 years, something of the
Yeah.
sort. NHS funding is particularly tight. You've had evolution of particular professional groups that are um, no longer particularly endorsed, as an example. So you make tough choices.
Mm.
You make it, decisions which require you to um, make sacrifices.
Yeah.
You have to accept the fact that things move on beyond you. And subsequently we start to pivot. And you
Mm.
pivot to other professional groups, other markets, whether it's business to customer or business to business. And then that's when you start to learn more about your own operation,
Yep.
and then things start to get a little bit better. So I think in summary, it's more about um, accepting that you need to pivot, and then doing that as quick as possible, because
Mm.
sometimes that's necessary. um, you can't be sitting on your laurels all day, basically.
Yeah.
um,
And we were talking about this just before starting as well, that like often we tend to forget that we are also the founder of the business. Um, and it sounds like the pivots require you to really wear that hat of a founder, um, in its full sense, and say, actually, even though we've committed so much to this, we've got to do something different. Do you remember a moment when you kind of had to say, like, actually, I'm not just a director, I'm not just doing the education, I'm actually also the founder? And when did that happen for you?
that's yeah, we were talking about this before, weren't we? That was always a big thing, because when we started this, we've got full-time jobs, well,
Hmm.
part-time. We're not full-time, either of us, actually,
Yeah.
anymore, but
Okay.
you have your full-time job at the time, and you're growing. And the start of most businesses is very vertical.
Yeah.
You're getting interest. Your first introductory Instagram post gets hundreds of likes.
Yeah.
Everybody's really excited. You know that feeling, Shub, right?
Oh yeah.
Everybody everybody's onto you. You'll get adrenaline's high. And then, yeah, okay, fine, you start to tail off, but you start to build momentum. you know everybody realizes and accepts that you're new in the space.
Hmm.
You get lots of traction. You're building email lists. You're getting site visitors, impressions on your videos. Everything is really, really good. Now, but with that, the work starts to build up. The email management starts to build up. The posting on Instagram starts to build up, or the posting on Facebook. The video editing starts to build up. The reel editing starts to build up. The newsletter writing starts to build up. I can keep
Yeah.
going on and on and on.
Yeah.
And you end up giving yourself a role.
Hmm.
So, I am Dr. Mohammed Oomerjee, and I'm the newsletter writer. This
Yeah.
is my job
Yeah.
on a Sunday evening every week, to write this newsletter. Now, at the start, that's not a problem.
Hmm.
You're going to have to wear multiple hats, right?
Yeah.
But the more hats you wear, the less mental span you have to think about the overall direction of your operation.
Hmm.
So you almost stop thinking like a founder.
Yeah.
You start to think like, and this is not in a disrespectful way, this is just the reality. You start to think like an employee,
Hmm.
where you're going through the mechanics of everything again. And that's exactly the type of thing that you want to get out of, and that's why you started your operation. um, so it needs somebody external, almost. So we have the fortunate opportunity that we have a mentor that we can go to seek advice.
Hmm.
And that mentor asked me a simple question once. What's your name? I said, Dr. Mohammed Oomerjee.
Yeah.
And, what are you with respect to Pareto education? And I struggled to answer that question.
Hmm.
And then he said, "You're the founder, mate." And I thought, oh, yeah, I am the founder.
Easy to forget, easy to forget. And I mean, I think this is a very common problem in loads of books writing about it. And yeah, Michael Gerber, in his book that I just mentioned as well, E-Myth, also talks about this. And he's like, you go from being an employee to working in the worst job ever, which is being employed for a horrible boss, which is yourself,
Mm,
because you don't really know how to run the business by that point, and you're just kind of
yeah.
employed for yourself, and that's a big challenge, and it's grateful that you had the outside opinion and the view of your mentor in that situation to say, "Hey, what are you doing?"
It's true. And I think it was a complete mentality change, because then, and everybody has this point at a different stage of their business. So it's not a one size fits all. And we are still a startup in reality,
Hmm.
right? But
Hmm.
then you make the conscious decision that even if it pinches your pocket, you're going to have to try and offload certain responsibilities to others. So you start to
Yeah.
bring in an editor. We brought in a social media manager as an example. We brought in an a designer for our written materials and our ebooks, etc.
Hmm.
So we started to bring in staff. We brought in somebody who looks at analytics. You realize that you can't do all of it, but the blessing in all of that is that you can now think like a founder.
Yeah.
So, our meetups with me and Camille, yes, there's some mechanics involved, in terms of content creation, etc., in terms of the
Hmm.
actual videos, but not the editing. But
Hmm.
most of the day goes into strategizing, thinking, troubleshooting,
Yeah.
understanding where our overall direction is, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, brilliant. Actually getting to work on the business rather than in it, and letting the business actually do what it's meant to do,
Yes.
is beautiful. So where is Pareto education heading into the future, and what are some of the sort of trends and big picture view you have of your audience, of your market, and the education business space?
So I think the aim is, as I said, to become a one-stop shop for the professional development of clinicians in the NHS.
Hmm.
That involves catering to both mandatory training and also kind of voluntary training. Um, we're hoping to, in the end, create a calendar all year round of courses that are not just run once, but are run multiple times, um, that really address clinicians' pain points. Because there's some
Mm,
exciting spaces that are developing in the NHS. There's, for example, there's mental health A&Es that are developing. There's urgent care centers that are developing. You know a lot of
yeah,
these things as well in acute care.
yeah,
There's a big need for clinicians and clinical training in different areas of the NHS.
mm,
So what we're trying to build, we're trying to build a platform to facilitate that.
okay,
An easy to use platform to facilitate that, as well as developing good quality, um, good quality content, because we realize that quality is everything. Um, quality is absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely everything. Oh, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, just talk to me about the content piece, because I follow you on socials and I love your short videos and the very educational. Talk to me about the strategy behind that. What's working, what's not working for you?
It's a good question. So it's a learning curve. Myself and Camille are not particularly public people at all.
Okay.
So there's been a level of trying to become that, of
Mm,
telling ourselves that actually this is something that's necessary. We're called, and so what we've done is that we've understood what our market looks like.
mm,
So our market looks like is made up of students and professionals, and
right.
generally our age range is from about 22 until about 40,
Okay.
40 to 45. And of course, you've got extremes beyond that. And
Mm,
we understand that they exist in terms of the ages on different platforms. The younger
okay.
audiences are largely on TikTok. The probably the 30-year-olds, it's still, tend to use Instagram.
Mm.
Many professionals use LinkedIn. In fact, LinkedIn probably gets a lot of traction for us as a company.
Okay.
And the generally people who are around the age of 40 and beyond, Facebook is their home.
Facebook. Yeah.
So with that, you almost have to think like a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old, a 40-year-old, and beyond.
Interesting.
So we tend not to have a uniform set of content that we put up on all of our platforms. We actually try to make it different on all of our platforms,
Mm.
in order to try and cater to the appetite of those audiences. And as I said, we have somebody who does the analytics to see how that translates onto revenue generation or even
Yeah.
impressions or whatever it may be. Um, and we've got YouTube, which of course is one of the
Yeah.
biggest platforms in the whole world, and we're looking to grow on all
Mm.
of those, and to try and provide free content for people to use and to understand and appreciate, and hopefully that allows them to come interact with us more.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think social media is becoming more and more media and less social, really. I think
Mm.
it is a place to be if you're serious about what you do and if you've got a vision and something you're trying to achieve in the world.
It's
Um,
true. I think the quality is, is you're looking for noise within noise in social
yeah,
media,
yeah.
because there's so much noise, right? And to my knowledge, I think we're probably one of the few medical CPD companies um, that, as in professional CPD, not necessarily
Mm.
med school
Education.
tutorial
Yeah.
videos. Those exist on YouTube,
Yeah.
etc. But professional CPD companies that exist on mainstream social media.
Yeah.
Um, so we're trying to create some form of awareness of our operation, and every day is some videos do well, some videos don't do too well, some videos go viral, and we're not entirely sure why they've gone viral, but we learn about it, and then we try and we try and
Mm.
experiment.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a brilliant space and an amazing time to be doing this. I mean, it's in a way never been easier, but also never been harder in so many aspects.
Mm.
I'm mindful of your time. I know you've got to get going shortly after 3. So I do want to perhaps move into our next phase. I'm just going to ask our listeners to drop in any questions. I think this it's always interesting doing it during daytime. Clearly, people are at work. So I was like, how many people might be watching? But yeah, if there's any questions from our listeners, please do drop them into the comment section there. And let's move into the second section where I'll let you ask me anything you like about whatever you want to ask me about.
So I've got a question.
Okay.
Um, so this is a cheeky question, but you've got 30 episodes so far,
Hmm.
and you've spoken to founders from various different um, from different backgrounds doing different projects, and of course, learning is a two-way street.
Yeah.
So, do you have any golden nugget of advice from your cumulative insights
Hmm.
that you would share with a founder like me?
Yeah. Interesting. So there's a couple of things that often come up, and that common trend of having these conversations with so many different founders and hearing about what the challenges were, what worked, what didn't work, what journeys were behind the founders, like who is the person behind the title of the founder, has been really, really interesting. One of the things that constantly comes up is this sense of audacity
Mm.
to just do things, just do it. And I think a common theme of what's worked really well across various founders that I've spoken to is the ability to, one, just go ahead and do something without worrying about success or failure. But then the second bit is picking up on the end of that and saying, what am I responding to? What feedback matters to me? Who am I serving and how do I serve them better? Like that genuine sense of understanding who your market is, which I hear from you as well, to be like, it was a tough time, end of COVID, it was affecting a lot of domains in your life, but you just went and did it. And then you constantly surveyed and you listened to your market and you heard what's going on with them. And I think that is, if everything else is removed, I think that is the essence of reaching success in your business of like
Mm,
doing and listening and doing and listening and doing and listening
mm.
is the cycle that I think good founders just get really, really good at. Um, yeah, I think that's the big one.
No, that's good. That's I've taken some points. That's It's good because it's always useful to have somebody reflect on your experience, and
Yeah.
especially because you've been exposed to so many, different founders, as you said. But that's really valuable what you've said.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of other bits in there of like who are you actually targeting, what niche are you in, how do you position yourself, how do you do your marketing. But I see all of those things as tactics on
Mm,
top of the core nugget of actually what does it mean to be a founder.
mhm,
And I think it's that ability to do selflessly and listen selflessly.
mm,
And I think essentially creating value in the world, and it's the tough bit is, I think, from a founder's perspective, the tough bit is aligning it with things that you enjoy, things that really matter to you.
mm,
You know, you might put out a piece of content or something that you think is super valuable, but it turns out to be valuable to a completely different group of people,
mm,
or hits value in a different sense. Like we could be having this conversation and I'm thinking, oh, this framework is very useful for you, but then you walk away saying like, oh, I should do a podcast, and I'm like, that's not what I was going for, but sure. Right. So it's tricky to
mm,
have it received the way you intend things to be received,
mhm.
um, but also just kind of realizing that you're not doing this for yourself,
Of course. Of
which
course.
is why I think clinicians make amazing founders.
Yeah. No, that's useful.
Yeah.
That's very valuable. No, thank you very much.
Yeah. No, pleasure. Thank you for the amazing conversation we've had so far about sharing the ins and outs of Pareto education. I'm sure it's been super inspirational for our listeners. Before we close, is there anything that I should have asked you that you think I didn't ask you?
Um, no, I think you've been very conversant, and it's been a very intimate discussion about a lot of things that probably I haven't spoken about before. Um, and I think it's probably come to its natural end. So I appreciate the time that you've given
Oh,
and the
brilliant.
opportunity that you've given me to speak a little bit about Pareto education. And of course, for the listeners, you're always welcome to whatever we do.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being candid and sharing all of that. If people listening to this want to reach out to you and just have a chat with you, what's the best place for them to do that?
So probably on LinkedIn. Um, I'm Dr. Mohammed Oomerjee, as it's on the screen. I'm relatively active on my LinkedIn. So if you are interested, or you want to learn more, or you wish to collaborate, and feel free to reach out, and I'm sure we can organize something.
Yeah, I'll leave a link to your LinkedIn as well as the Pareto Education website down in the comments and the description of wherever this gets posted. And I think on that note, I'm going to say that's a wrap for today's episode. A huge thanks to Dr. Mohammed Oomerjee for sharing how he built Pareto Education and for showing that you can grow an education business without losing your clinical identity. If you found this episode valuable, make sure to follow or subscribe and share it with a friend or colleague who's building something of their own. Our next live episode is actually tomorrow, Wednesday, 15th of October at 1 p.m. I'll be joined by Dr. Ali Jaffe, who's the co-founder of NutriTank, a groundbreaking platform that's transforming how nutrition and lifestyle medicine are taught in medical schools. We'll talk about starting movements, building partnerships, and creating impact at scale. So subscribe to not miss out. Once again, a massive thanks to Dr. Akash Vijayan for the intro music to this podcast, which will be on Spotify and all the other platforms. Check out his work on Spotify and SoundCloud. Until then, keep building, stay bold, and remember, you have the power to create something extraordinary.